Okay, good evening, everybody. We are officially live. Welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting for the 27th of February. If you could just take a moment to silence your cell phones. Also, if you would like to sign up to speak, and you've done it already, good work. If you want to sign up to speak and you haven't done it already, you can go out in the hall and they'll sign you up to speak, and then we'll see it on our list up here. And now, if we're ready, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have one proclamation tonight, and that is Procurement Month, which is very exciting. And we have a number of people that are here for this exciting proclamation, and if you all want to come forward with your fearless leader. Tony, are you the leader? Who's the leader?
Oh, wow. Amy is.
Oh, wow.
What are we procuring? Everything?
Procurement. Okay, all right, very exciting.
That's about time.
We do procure a lot of things. Whereas the purchasing, acquisition, procurement, and materials management professions play a significant role in the efficiency and effectiveness of both government and business, and whereas in addition to the purchase of goods and services, procurement professionals add value to an organization by performing such functions as executing, implementing, and administering contracts and developing strategic procurement strategies with suppliers and other departments within the organization. And whereas public procurement professionals, whereas public procurement professionals in the city of Asheville are committed to providing strategic, logistical, and operational support to all departments within the city of Asheville. And whereas procurement professionals in the city of Asheville make important contributions to help ensure the responsible use of taxpayer dollars by providing efficient service while maintaining the highest ethical standards to ensure open, fair, and transparent purchasing activities. And whereas the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing has declared the month of March as Procurement Month to further expand the awareness of the procurement professionals' role to government officials and the general public, as well as business and corporate leaders. Now therefore, I, Esther Manheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville, do hereby proclaim March 2024 as Procurement Month in Asheville and commend its observance to all citizens and residents.
All right.
I'm Andrew Carlson, Purchasing Coordinator.
Brenda Griffith, Administrative Assistant.
Beatrice Abernathy, Purchasing Specialist.
Tanya Vest, Purchasing Coordinator.
Amy Patterson, Purchasing Manager.
Elizabeth O'Shea, Assistant Purchasing Manager.
Sarah Armstrong, Contract Administrator.
And Becky Ogles, Assistant Finance Director.
I don't think I've said the word procurement more times than that ever. Okay. We're moving on to the consent agenda. First, we're going to remove item B from the consent agenda. We'll talk about it in our upcoming agenda review. And Councilwoman Roney, if you want to say a couple words about that.
Sure, and I move that we accept the consent agenda with the exception of item B. For myself, I can say that I was surprised that we weren't going with one of the multiple local MWBE contractors. How can our local contractors build capacity if it's not for projects just like this one? So I appreciate staff's willingness to make some more time, because if we don't have urgency, we can make time for relationships and better understanding.
So that's a motion to approve except without item B. Do I have a second?
Sandra, I'll second.
Okay, and we don't have anyone to signed up to speak under this item. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have adopted the consent agenda, and now we're going to move into the manager's report. I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Deborah Campbell, to kick us off.
All righty, thank you, and I am going to buy some time for, got Jade here, got one staff person.
There's Jade.
There you go, Emily, thank you. The two items that we have for the manager's report is to provide an update on the shelter strategy. I think you all had a lot of conversation about that at the retreat. And then an update on capital improvement program, also a lot of conversation around our capital facilities needs. So we will start with Emily Ball.
Good evening, glad to be here with you all. I am, as Deborah said, I'm going to share an update on some planning, shelter planning work that's underway right now. This will connect to the continuum of care work that is transitioning in our community, so I'm also going to give you a bit of an update about that. Key takeaways, as you certainly know, we've talked about several times, unsheltered homelessness increased really significantly during the pandemic in our communities. So based on the comprehensive needs assessment that we received from the National Alliance to End Homelessness, along with recommendations, they recommended adding 95 emergency shelter beds to meet the need in our community. Our community's current leadership board is the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, or HIAC. And HIAC, as the leadership board, led implementation of those recommendations and identified 3 shelter providers who were able to collectively add 43 new emergency shelter beds that were funded by you all as well as by Buncombe County through ARPA resources. And as part of that, HIAC also asked that the city and county participate with them in planning a new emergency shelter. That shelter planning process has begun with city, county, and HIAC participants and project management from Buncombe County staff. The planning team has made some progress so far on the scale, the services to be included, and the space needs, and I'll walk through those. And planning efforts continue and, again, will integrate with the work of the continuum of care over time as the continuum of care is transitioning. Brief background, again, unsheltered homelessness increased during the pandemic. Dogwood funded the National Alliance to End Homelessness for that needs assessment and recommendations. The results of that project were delivered to you all at a joint City Council and County Commissioner meeting in January of 2023. And as the current leadership board, HIAC, again, was the leader in implementing those recommendations and voted to adopt the recommended goals and began identifying priorities in the recommendations for implementation. One of those was related to insufficient emergency shelter inventory in our community and a recommendation to add 95 emergency shelter beds that adhere to best practices, so embracing a housing first approach, implementing safe and appropriate diversion, offering immediate and low barrier access to anyone in a housing crisis, measuring performance to improve results, and practicing cultural humility and inclusion and following HUD's equal access rule. As the current Continuum of Care Board, HIAC led implementation of the recommendations, developed a shelter work group that led a process that resulted in adding those 43 year-round shelter beds that, again, were jointly supported by city and county ARPA funding. Those beds are currently operational, have been very well utilized. And then the shelter work group also recommended that HIAC partner with the city and county on planning a new emergency shelter. So that planning process began a few months ago, late fall of 2023. And Lacey Hoyle at Buncombe County has been serving as the project manager for this planning team. You can see the team members there, so that is city and county leadership, along with 3 HIAC members. That's David Nash, who chairs HIAC, Rick Freeman, who's a HIAC member, and Jamie Benshoff, who's a HIAC member. Some of the planning team activities so far, again, primarily driven by county staff in this project management capacity, have included researching existing homeless resources and identifying that most services are near the city center and that any shelter location would need to be walkable or easily accessed by public transit. They have reviewed historic point-in-time data to project needed capacity and reviewed the best practices from the Alliance and also from HUD that include avoiding charging fees, allowing people who are intoxicated, not requiring additional references or unnecessary requirements. The planning team has also reviewed 8 service models from other communities based on Alliance recommendations as well as models of interest to the team members. You can see the names of those there. So really an in-depth look at some other shelter models in other communities across the country. Following that, the group looked at services, built some consensus around services that should be included in any new emergency shelter. I want to emphasize that this is planning work done so far. This is collaborative, discussion-based work where the group, again, has built some consensus, but none of this is set in stone. This is a planning process that will continue to evolve. So far, the discussion has been around 100 non-congregate beds, making sure that there is some flexible space that can accommodate 50 congregate beds when needed. So something like an open area that could allow for cots or mattresses for overflow capacity if needed. Case management, housing placement support and employment support, behavioral health and medical care and substance use treatment, and then day shelter space.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt at this
No,
point. So I noticed on the first slide, it said 95 beds. Here, it says 100 non-congregate plus 50 congregate. Can you explain the reasoning behind exceeding the recommended number?
Yes, and I'll again caveat that all of this is still in motion. This is planning process that will continue to get refined. The 95 beds recommended by the Alliance were based on the data available to them at the time, which was primarily our 2022 point-in-time data. So as county staff have looked at more recent data than that and looked at projections into the future and then estimated demand based on those projections, we landed on that estimate of 100 non-congregate beds.
Have you seen instances where there's ever been like a best practice? What are best practices for the number in one location?
I don't know that there's an answer to that. I think it's really dependent on the community. Certainly, I will say that this group has had a lot of discussion about a single site versus multiple smaller sites. The Alliance had some input on that in their report. There is still work to be done and analysis to be done on kind of a cost benefit between. There are a number of programmatic efficiencies if you have more beds in one location. You can staff it effectively, et cetera. It gets harder to be efficient when you have multiple locations, and there are some benefits in multiple smaller locations. You can be more tailored to the needs of the particular subpopulation. Some things are easier operationally, so I'd say there's still opportunity to refine that.
One of the things that's been coming up at HIAC too is a conversation about multi-generational households that are losing their housing. We know that there are young people sleeping on couches. We know that the aging and older adult population of homelessness is growing, and it points in the direction of multi-generational households losing their housing.
I'll highlight here that a real benefit of non-congregate beds is that it does give you a lot of flexibility in the population that you serve. If a household is in a single room alone, that really changes your operational considerations. So the group has also built some consensus on operating policies to include being open 24/7, allowing pets, serving both families and individuals, and including those best practices identified by the Alliance and by HUD. And county staff, Lacey primarily, but county staff have been reaching out to service providers in the community, particularly connected to those behavioral health and medical care services with a view towards some on-site co-located care for people who would be staying in the shelter. and have her support from service providers during those preliminary conversations about their interest in participating and some potential capacity. Again, early planning effort, so much more to be developed around that. Based on the specs that I've just discussed so far, the planning team also looked at space needs for the shelter and reviewed some of the space considerations in other shelters in other communities to try to estimate what that square footage need might be. And I won't go through this in detail, but the big takeaway, that third line from the bottom, is looking at a total building square footage of just under 47,000 square feet, making sure that there's outdoor space, adequate parking, et cetera. Connected to space needs, the group also looked at some site selection criteria, so some things that seem to be preferences at this point in the discussion. That includes around 50,000 square feet, a single building with multiple entrance options to accommodate multiple populations, a mixed array of interior spaces, again, ideally including 100 or more smaller rooms for that non-congregate capacity. Certainly any shelter would need to be ADA accessible. Vacant lots should be considered, but existing buildings may provide a more immediate response to need. I think the group is open to either of those possibilities. To your question, there is still some discussion that a single site seems to be ideal, but multiple sites could be considered if that makes more sense.
What does proximate mean? Like 2 buildings on
Nearby.
one parcel or 2 buildings miles apart?
Just nearby. There's not been a more specific definition of that. Certainly not a requirement that they be on the same parcel. Within city limits, on an existing transit route with high frequency, in an area with sidewalk and pedestrian infrastructure, appropriately zoned and proximate to other services. So again, making sure that folks who are accessing shelter are able to also access the associated services that they might need. Next step, so this month, Lacey has reported out the process to date to HIAC at their February 8th meeting and also to county commissioners. I am here tonight to share the update so far. And then going forward, county and city staff will be working to identify potential sites for consideration, starting to look at potential operating costs, and then over time, making sure to integrate this planning effort with the new continuum of care. We want to be sure that the city and county and HIAC, that no one is sort of moving in a singular direction without being really synced up with the planning efforts across our wider community. So as our continuum of care restructures, which I'll share about in a moment, as our continuum of care restructures, we'll have opportunity to integrate this kind of planning effort into that new body to be sure that the decision-making and the implementation are governed by that body and aligned with that overall planning work. So I have a few more slides about the continuum of care transition, but I'll pause here to see if you want to discuss anything more about shelter, have any questions.
I should probably, you all know, I'm working on this particular task force, whatever it's called, with a county counterpart. So, and Emily's squished it all into a great presentation, but we've had multiple meetings, and part of, to your point, Antoinette, of the due diligence, if you will, is sort of studying all these other cities and how they assemble a low barrier shelter. Do they couple it with services like you saw listed there? Do they have medical services? Do they have job services? Do they have, addiction? All the sorts of things that also a day shelter would offer. And so maybe it's a way to consolidate a day shelter services. So how do you accommodate families? How do you structure a building so it can accommodate families? How do you accommodate people who are traditionally difficult to accommodate from a access standpoint? So if they are in active addiction or if they're on a sex offender registry, all those sorts of challenges and logistics. There are a lot of examples for us to look at, and also how do you number the number of beds? Like how, what are they? So it's been really interesting. The short story is that a lot of cities have facilities like this with variations on what services they blend together. So we have a little bit of catching up to do in that regard, but we have a lot of providers in the city that are able to help
So Esther,
inform
do
this
you know,
conversation.
it may be Brad, but Esther, I know some municipalities have like regulations, like you can't be within X feet of a school.
Sure,
Or
yeah.
you can't,
If you're on the sex offender list.
but
Yeah.
also for shelters in particular.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Or yeah, by a school, or sometimes
Sure.
it's by a residential area zoned RS, whatever it is. I'm wondering, do we have any of those types of restrictions in our area?
Yes, excellent question. So we currently recognize shelter as a defined land use, which means that it is permitted or not permitted in certain zoning districts. Council retains the authority, however, to conditionally zone any particular area to essentially allow for uses that are not otherwise a by right option. But currently, there are areas that a shelter would not be a by right option in without additional council authorization.
Okay.
And to be clear, no site has been identified. So all those kinds of logistics are being considered in terms of the challenges of each site. So little.
Does that map already exist, the zoning that allows the shelters?
It's not a map per se, but it is,
something that can
if
be
you will
done.
look in in
The
section
table of
7 of the
uses.
city's
Yeah.
UDO, it will tell you there's a chart of land uses and which a shelter, which specific zoning designations it's permitted in and which it's not.
But this task force hasn't looked at that or anything?
No, it's considering all the limitations on sites and whether the site will require rezoning or not, or, these sorts of things.
And city staff has been very intentional about contextualizing the location, that we obviously don't want to kind of plop it into an area where the use would be incompatible or inconsistent. So a lot of thought going
So-
on. We would want it to be kind of on a business corridor.
So my thought on that is kind of the same discussion we were having at the retreat about displacement strategies, right? So I'm looking at this particular issue the same way. So in my mind, is consideration being given to placing it near other vulnerable populations?
Would we be doing that?
Because that
or-
wouldn't necessarily be a zoning issue,
Right.
right?
Sure.
Like an example, okay, so we're seeing in the paper, people in housing authority properties being upset about crime. Would we take special consideration and go, maybe we shouldn't put that near one of those vulnerable areas? Or do we have any displacement strategies that we're considering?
I think that
Or is that
we
a
would
crazy
look at, hopefully, not putting this use in an area where it may exacerbate and disrupt existing environments. And that's why I'm thinking, again, we will contextualize it. As the mayor said, we've definitely not made a decision on a location. So all of those criteria will be taken into consideration when we say the context. What are
Okay.
the existing land uses? What is the income? All of those things will be considered.
If I could add to that, I just would say that, a shelter has to work for the community. It has to work for the people who are seeking shelter, but it has to work for the wider community. And I think the planning group is really aware of that. All right. Again, just a few slides about the continuum of care transition, and I think what has been happening in the shelter planning group is that it has brought together stakeholders from multiple institutions, city and county, for example, but also brought together representatives from HIAC. We want to do more and more and more of that, and we want it to be better and better as the continuum of care evolves, and this is exactly what the continuum of care is designed to do, is to create this community-level, open, transparent planning body in our communities so that together we can best respond to homelessness. So a continuum of care is a self-governing local planning body. It is not an organization, does not deliver services. It is a formal planning body that is self-governing, planning body of stakeholders led by a board that they elect and staffed by a lead agency they designate to provide strategic and administrative support. What has not been true in our community in the past, but what should be true and what is true in communities with the most effective response to homelessness is that the COC is the leadership body on homelessness in the community. It consolidates planning and decision-making to be most strategic and effective. Really what a COC is a collective impact model at the community level. Its designated lead agency, this is important to me to highlight. I think this has been a lot of confusion in our community historically. Its designated lead agency does not hold issue ownership, but serves as primary staff to the leadership body that does hold issue ownership. And serving as primary staff includes facilitating applications for federal funding. Regardless of who the lead agency is, those responsibilities would be the same. So staffing that planning body, staffing the board and its associated bodies is the role of the lead agency.
You watched our confusing conversation at the retreat about that.
Here to help.
Thank you
Just
for
trying to help.
clarifying.
The city, well, and I think it has been very confusing for our community for a long time. The language is confusing, lead agency is confusing terminology. The city of Asheville holds a dual role related to the COC. The first is that as local government and a key stakeholder, so as a municipal body, the city of Asheville can and should fill its dedicated board seat with executive leadership to help direct COC strategy, should assign a non-voting council liaison to the COC board, and very importantly, should direct city efforts, decisions, and resources related to homelessness through the COC to ensure that its actions align with the COC's strategies and plans. So it means that the city is at the table, but is not the table, and is no less or no more, but is at the table with peers in solving this community problem. Second role that the city has with the continuum of care is that the city is the designated lead agency, means the city is responsible to provide staff resources for strategic and administrative support to the COC. That includes facilitating access to federal funding. That's that $2 million in HUD funding that was recently announced. And ensuring regulatory compliance. This is the reason that we organize the point-in-time count, for example. That's a requirement for COCs. And then coordinating all administrative logistics and record keeping. So meeting materials, communications, and then providing staffing the board, committees, and work groups. And this is the primary work of our division and the Homeless Strategy Division. As you know, the number one recommendation from the National Alliance to End Homelessness was to restructure our COC, and that is happening now. The new membership body of stakeholders has formed. We've not had that in the past in our community. And newly, we do have a COC membership body. As of a couple days ago, we had 227 members. That's 183 individuals and 44 organizations. I think that's tremendous. Yeah, tremendous. It is. It shows a lot of community enthusiasm for responding to this issue and a lot of will to take action. I hope that that is just the beginning. Membership will be open on an ongoing basis, and the new membership body will meet for the first time 2 days from now, February 29th, 6 p.m. at the Harris-Cherokee Center to vote on adopting a new governing charter and to initiate the process to elect a new board. The second meeting of the membership will be at the end of April to elect that new board. And then the new board will participate in training and strategic planning and will appoint folks from that membership body to committees related to COC and service system development and including funding. The board composition, there are 19 board members for the new Continuum of Care board. Board members are intended to have program and fiscal authority in their respective organizations and to represent their sector of community stakeholders. So not only to represent themselves or their organization, but really if I'm in the faith community seat, I'm intended to represent a network of faith communities throughout. The board is intended to be folks, again, with program and fiscal authority who can really come together and make robust decisions at the community level. There are 4 appointed seats on the board, so there is a dedicated seat for City of Asheville staff, dedicated seat for Buncombe County staff, along with the Housing Authority and the VA Medical Center. And then there are 15 representative seats that are sector dedicated rather than entity dedicated. So those include subject matter experts with lived experience of homelessness, healthcare and behavioral healthcare systems, community member, faith community and business organizations, service providers, local non-governmental funder, and a public safety seat. And then 2 non-voting liaisons, 1 from City Council and 1 from Buncombe County Commissioners. Next steps on the continuum of care. So the city has joined as a member organization, is one of those 44 organizations, and will submit an application to fill its dedicated board seat. I'm so happy to say that Deborah Campbell is going to sit in that board seat for the city. I think that it really shows tremendous commitment on the city's part to the importance of this issue and to really investing in the continuum of care structure. Council will be able to identify your non-voting liaison to the board, and then once the new board is elected, it will replace HIAC as the continuum of care board. Once that happens, staff will request council action to dissolve HIAC so that we can really focus all efforts through the continuum of care. Key takeaways again, really working hard through this planning process to expand emergency shelter capacity with partners in our community. And the planning team has made some progress on that, but we'll continue to integrate those efforts with the new continuum of care.
And I may be putting the mayor on the spot, but I think
Yeah.
we want her to serve in the city council's non-voting liaison.
Right, so I got a call from one of the members asking that the mayor and the manager have a slot on the CSC and the county manager and the county chair. And I am quite willing to do it. I feel like I've already missed though something. Anyway, this has been a little fluid. So because I hope that whoever is the mayor forever and ever and ever serves on the COC. And I think if we're gonna expect other community partners to send their head honchos, we gotta send our, not that I'm a head honcho, but Deborah certainly is a head honcho. And so we need to make sure we're at the table. And we're trying to get confirmation from the county whether they're gonna agree with that. What do you think, Emily?
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I do think that we need that COC board in particular to bring together our largest institutional partners and the big sectors in our community to make things happen, you know, to make resources available, make big community level decisions. And as city staff, I appreciate that you all are willing to do that, to demonstrate that commitment from the city. I hope that that encourages peers across the community to join the board in the same way.
Sounds good.
Could we go back a couple slides to the membership where you had the numbers, that one? We have a lot of people who spent their time and energy to come down to City Hall tonight. Thank you so much. And we also have folks that are watching at home. And I just wanted to invite you on a personal level. Our organization has signed up to be a member of the COC. This is going to be owned by our community. It's an opportunity for shared accountability and shared success. If your organization, your workplace, your faith community, your book reading club wants to consider joining as a group, as an organization, but especially if you as an individual, I've joined as an individual, as a music educator who works with young people in our community. You're invited. This belongs to all of us. It's not just the cities anymore. And I think we can get better outcomes if we work on this together. So I just wanted to make that appeal. We're getting ready to seat the board, but the work groups will need lots of people because that's where the real nitty-gritty is going to happen. So please consider, all you have to do is Google Homeless Strategy Asheville. You'll find a page called Homeless Strategy on ashevillec.gov, and it has both the individual and the organizational membership forms.
All right, thank you, Emily. And we apologize, these are pretty dense presentations, but bear with us, we'll get through it. Dave, and I think you have some other staff that will be making the presentation with you.
Yes, that's right. Jade Dentis, Capital Projects Director. Thank you for the time this evening, Mayor and members of council. I'll try to quickly get through this. Today is a little bit, this is our quarterly update for capital projects. I did ask some colleagues to attend tonight as experts on the various projects. And so I'll be having them come up and explain the projects as we go through. Just to introduce the key takeaways, progress is being made on key downtown projects. I do plan on bringing more of a summary of all those projects and the impacts to the downtown in the next quarterly update. A significant amount of downtown construction activity will be coming up throughout the year. Scheduling coordination of these projects is essential to ensuring that we are delivering with the minimum disruption to businesses and normal facility operations. And then also to highlight how we're planning on helping to supplement that communication. I'll finish the presentation with the explanation of a communication specialist that we've a position that we've created and are hiring for right now. With that, I will pass it off to Jessica Morse to talk about college patent.
Good evening, Council. Jessica Morris, Interim Transportation Director. Quick update on where we are with the College Patton Complete Streets project. As a reminder, the project scope for this is to install protected bike lanes on College and Patton in the core of downtown. The budget for this was part of the FY 2022 CIP and is $100,000. The schedule is that we had the project approved by City Council in October of last year, and we expect to put the invitation to bid out in early March, so sometime in the next week or so. And then we would expect proposals to come in near the end of March, and we intend to come back to City Council for contract approval in April. We expect the project to be completed within 75 to 90 days and that it would begin in mid-May. Any questions on that one before I hand it over?
Do we have an estimate of how long it will take? I know
So
summertime is a busy time for business owners to have their streets, and I think that's part of why we're seeing all this information, but
yeah.
if I'm getting questions, how long do we expect this project to last?
So 75 to 90 days is what we're going to require of the contractor. So as soon as they get notice to proceed, then that clock would start. So right after approval by City Council is when notice to proceed would go out. So, and that timeframe that we're gonna be requiring is intended to try to get the project done quickly, but also before fall. We wanna have everything installed by then, before it gets very, very busy here.
I know this has come up before. What are the kind of things that are in place to make it so that that timeline is incentivized? Or I know some cities have a higher fine than we do for if projects aren't finished on time, so that folks don't move onto a different project and not get one done.
Mm-hmm. So there will be liquidated damages included in the contract, and that will all be part of the bid documents that go out too. And that's sort of a stick situation rather than a carrot situation, but it's to, you know, enforce that we intend for this project to be done quickly and with as little disruption as possible. And then just to follow up on that as well, to try to minimize disruptions, we are being very specific in the bid that they have to go in a certain order, block by block. That way that we can also facilitate communication more easily with property owners and business owners as well. Thanks.
Deborah, I appreciate the format with the heads up on you're going to get this coming to council soon, so that we're up to speed on what staff's working on.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Greg Schuler, Public Works Director. I want to give you a quick update on the project that I talked to you about back in October. Excuse me. This is a small but important sidewalk project in our downtown, and excuse me. You can see with the green, that is where we are going to be putting in some tree pit replacements. We're going to be adding some new ramps where the purple squares are, and putting in ginkgos, alcovas, and lindens, be the species of trees there. Thank you.
You're not taking away the pit, you're replacing the pit?
Yes, ma'am.
Like with the newer looking?
New grates.
Okay.
Yep. Again, just a project update is The budget is $300,000 from our Community Development Block Grants, CDBG. Again, we talked about this back in October. We expect to get the notice to proceed to Public Works later this week. Started communication back up with the stakeholders yesterday, and that communication will continue as the project progresses. Planning to start on March the 12th, the day after SoCon, just to let that kind of settle down. And we hope to begin working on the south side in front of the bank. It's just not as, feel like we can get a good start on that. There's not as many businesses there, and quite frankly, it's in worse condition. We expect to complete the project mid-May, weather permitting, as always, for this type of work. And happy to say this will be done by Public Works employees. Any questions?
I have a couple. Sage. So are we still doing the running bond pattern?
On this one, we don't intend to do running bond on this one. And we're trying to really get away from that for the most part.
Yay. It's actually not, I know, I guess you can't tell. It's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That running bond pattern is problematic, so I'm glad to hear that. The other question is, I see this a lot, and I use the app for this a lot. When we're doing the new tree grates, and they're close to the curb, we do this layer of brick around them. Are we still doing that? Because it is like a mess throughout downtown. I didn't know if maybe we're changing that plan.
We're not doing that on this project.
Yay, we've learned. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Thank you, and Sage, thank you again for the.
No problem.
The person with the stick, be careful for people walking down the, yeah, there you go.
Good evening. Chris Coral, Community and Regional Entertainment Facilities Director. Here to talk about McCormick Field renovation. So the project is moving forward. Reminder on the scope, we've talked through at length over the last year. We're meeting Major League Baseball standards. The goal is also to complete deferred maintenance at the field, improve fan experience throughout the venue, and try to create a multi-purpose and full year facility, so we're open more than just baseball season. And we also want to improve the energy efficiency and sustainability of the facility while we do the work. So first public-made renderings of the project here, so they will likely change slightly, but they're pretty far along in design at this point. Total budget's $37.5 million, that includes design. So construction budget's a little bit less than that. This is the new home clubhouse and public club in left field. It's where the Wicked Weed tent is, if you've been there recently. A different view of the left field building and schematic design showing the hitting tunnels down lower right, the club space, which is indoor and outdoor gathering space. So that helps our 12-month operation as far as events. The area between the grandstands and the building there is the future group sales space. So that would be I believe it's a 225-person capacity group sales space with seats directly against the fence and ADA accessible.
Can we pause there for a second?
Yeah.
I expected that was gonna be a taller building, but it looks like a great spot for solar. If we have an option, is that on us if that were to happen?
At this point, it would be on us if that were to happen. And solar at baseball stadiums doesn't jive very well. You have to add a whole lot of extra netting and some other things to protect the solar panels.
Right. I just expected that it was meant to be not so short, especially the use of space.
So yes, when we came to you for conditional zoning in September or October, we were planning to put everything you see here in left field and what you're about to see in right field all in one structure in right field. And frankly, it blew up the budget. So we had to figure out a way to stay on budget and stay on time with this. So we split the projects up and we're reusing the existing right field building and building this smaller left field building to meet budget on this.
Chris, are you going to tell us more about you can see the building, you can see the seating in the middle, and then your rendering inside shows more things happening on the left, but you can't see them in the big picture?
Yeah, let's see if you can. Okay, you can see my mouse. So
yeah.
Right here is under the grandstands.
Okay.
In the current setup. So that will be a weight room, it'll be IT, security, food and beverage storage, all under here. Right now, that's currently one hitting tunnel in the weight room for the team. As we go over, this is the club space, so this would be like your suites that we'll need in order to recruit tournaments. We'll need 2 of those, so we have the ability to split that up with the right field suite that will still exist. A replacement kitchen is this gray area. We're demolishing the current kitchen, building a new one, adding a new public restroom right here, and then everywhere else in this building is home team clubhouse. So that's men's and women's locker rooms for both coaches and umpires. It's 2 hitting tunnels for the teams, which actually has a door that opens between the club space and the hitting tunnels with the goal of being able to do birthday parties or off-season events where you can come in and utilize the hitting tunnels as part of that. New laundry facilities, mascot room, and then the actual locker room and training rooms. It's kind of grayed out in the big screen here, but this is the left field access to get out of the stadium to get up for grounds crew, which will be still living up at Hunt Hill area on top of the hill behind left field. Moving on to the front entrance, there'll be a small rework of the existing parking lot, a new ADA accessible ramp to get to the front gate, which currently does not exist. Renovation of the existing structure, so you can see how some of the roof lines are in here. Those structures exist. A little bit of a build out to include where my mouse is here. A team store, a reworked box office. Right now you have to actually enter the stadium, get your ticket, leave the stadium and go back in. Now you can buy your ticket and go in the stadium. Significantly enhanced front entrance. I don't remember the exact square footage, but it's a lot more space for all those other events, and plus it will just make it more functional for baseball. And increasing our food and beverage offerings. Right now, roughly this area is available for third-party vendors, and that's going to almost double in size for more merchandise and food vendors. And lots of programmable space. We're just now entering the design aspects of like the feel when you're in the facility. So the wayfinding signage, the graphics, just like that part of design. So there'll be more to come in this rendering as we move through that process. So timeline, miraculously, we are still on schedule. Design completion is slated for early June. We're gonna have our first bid opening date in July. If we need a second opening date, that will also happen in July. That is when we will receive our guaranteed maximum price, and we'll come back to this group in July for that approval. And that will be the big one. That'll be that big final contract. Construction slated to start September of 2024, like quite literally the day after the last game looks like when we're going to be starting. And we will go continuously until we reopen in April of 2026. So we'll have our first off season, no impact to direct impact to baseball ops. The 2025 season, we're going to have to coordinate really well with the tourists and with the construction manager. It is highly likely that we'll have a greatly reduced capacity in the 2025 season, like maybe as low as 500 persons per game in order to keep this operation going. 2025-26 off season will have no impact to baseball, just we need to get to that opening day, first week of April 2026. There's no room for a slip. We have about 2 weeks of baked in room for slip in the schedule, so we really have to be tight with this. And Jade and Dustin and the capital projects team, and you know, he called us all the subject matter experts, but I have transitioned from that, from making the deal. These guys are the ones making this happen at this point, and they're doing a great job running with it. Some keynotes, we're dedicating about 15 hours of meetings a week towards this. The capital projects team and I, we're really working to stay on project budget and time. And the off-season work, just with what winter can be, is really concerning in baseball operations. So again, no room for slip. And we're working early with the contractor to increase our inclusive outreach, which transitions to this next slide. So we've got some milestones built in to streamline the pre-qualification process. They have provided us their first draft of their plan, which Jade and Dustin on the capital projects team have actually asked them to make more robust. And so that's gone back to them to bring back to us again. But there's going to be project interest meetings to invite MWB outreach, project plan review, and explanation of the subcontracting process. Hub outreach and certification sessions are baked in, and office hours for assistance with bidding. So we're moving forward as fast as we can on this project. And at this point, I'm good for questions before I hand it back to Jade.
I have one. So, this is a public asset in a historic legacy neighborhood of Easton Valley Street, and previously, we've mostly used this public asset for baseball. One of the big things that I noticed when touring the facility is that the lack of gender-inclusive facilities, especially bathrooms, meant we couldn't have the kind of programming that reflects, I think, what our community wants to see. So of all the things I heard weightlifting and I heard batting areas, but I didn't hear a talk about the gender-inclusive facilities. Can you touch on that?
I might have to defer to Brad here, but House Bill 2 makes it so that we cannot have gender-neutral bathrooms in publicly owned facilities unless the lessee of the facility dictates the restroom be that. Is
But
that
there were
accurate?
only men's bathrooms in the home area.
Oh, yeah, the home area has men's and women's, so there's male and female, but there's no gender-neutral restrooms. So there's
How
male
about
and female
family?
locker rooms,
Family?
coaches, trainers, no family restrooms currently.
There's nothing preventing us from adding a family restroom, though?
No, nothing legally preventing us
There's
from
currently family in the,
Yeah, that's the common workaround.
There's one existing family restroom. It's a single stall that's on the right field side. That is getting absorbed into the visitors, isn't it? I might have to get back to you. I
Okay.
think that has to get
Please do,
absorbed
'cause I
into the
think-
visitors' footprint.
I know, like, for example, we wanted to be able to have, like, girls softball championships. We couldn't really do that because of the way our facilities were laid out.
Yeah, with the new layout of the locker rooms, we would be able to do that. And we could have a male and female umpire team, or we could have a group of coaches that are a mix of male and female. So we do have facilities for both.
Trainers, it's like, it was a pretty big ripple effect to only
Yes. Yep.
have one bathroom.
Any other questions?
Do you foresee any hidden costs or surprises coming with this kind of timeline of reduced
I sure
capacity?
hope
and-
not. We've had a good number of surprises already, just working through the budget and the scope, but nothing that we haven't been able to get through so far. I think just construction over winter is our biggest concern at this point, so more to come. Jay might want to add some more when he comes back up, but that
And
would
so,
be my biggest concern.
I guess I'm recalling the finance stack, and the team owner is paying an increase in lease.
Yes.
But for those years of construction, it is,
They paid $50,000 last year. This year it's $100,000.
that's
And
right, we scaled it.
We
Okay.
did scale it, but we skipped the 2025 season until we knew what the final capacity was to negotiate what that rent will be. So we'll have to come back to you
Okay.
with what that final rent is. If you recall, we have still not brought the final lease to this group to approve, and that's because we were waiting on our final capacities for 2025 to figure out what a fair rate is for that season.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll invite Jade back up.
Also, the delivery method for this project is construction manager at risk, and so that involves the contractor early in the process, and so they've been a really great partner in the design effort and doing cost estimating throughout the design process. So, there are there's always potential for things to come up, but that we are confident that working through it this way will help us to know what that budget is.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking about things that, outside the contract, like our regular revenues, if there were going to be any surprises. But
Oh, okay.
y'all got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last slide here, and I'll get through it very quickly, is that we do recognize that this is not a capital project per se, but it is going to touch all of our capital projects. We recognize that there's always a need for additional communication. You can never have enough. And so what we have found is that we have an FTE right now. We have a couple project manager FTEs, and right now our project load is relatively low. But we felt like over time, we'd be better served to have one of those FTEs as a communication specialist. And so we are working with CAPE to take one of those project management FTEs and convert that to a communication specialist. This position will be embedded in CAPE, but they will be project focused, and they will work throughout the city on all of our capital projects to help us to be able to update communications, to do outreach and engagement, and just to really be a resource internally for us to be able to be specifically focused on communication. We also understand, as I've indicated in the key takeaways, and then also through the projects that were highlighted this evening, is that downtown has got us a very strong, we're gonna have an impact on downtown. And so being able to have this position concentrate on downtown initially will be part of the focus. Position is posted until the end of this week and should be filled within the next month. We'll go, these are the key takeaways again, and I'll pause for any questions if you have.
Yes, Jay, could you give us the definition FTE?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a full-time equivalent. It's just basically an indicator of a position.
A full-time?
Yeah,
Okay.
full-time position.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you for that. Thanks a lot.
And thank you, staff, and we appreciate, again, you all's patience with us getting through some really important information that we wanted to share with you. You hopefully will realize that we truly are gearing up for hopefully a successful GO bond, and that communications person will be extremely important moving forward. So, thank you.
Right. You're getting your systems in place. Good.
All this preparation.
Okay, that concludes the manager's report, and we only had one. Oh,
It's not a part of the manager's report, it's
Oh,
the next
no, I'm
agenda
sorry.
item.
Are you-
No, you're fine.
Rachel, what are you doing? Are you up
New
here? Oh,
business
you're
day.
going down to business. Okay, sorry. So we have one public hearing item that needs a motion to continue it until March 26, 2024.
So moved.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that does it for public hearings. Now, Rachel. Sorry.
Sorry for throwing you off,
No,
Mayor.
your eyes. Sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rachel Wood, Assistant City Manager. Really quickly, today we're going to go through a funding request that was presented to us by Asheville Peak Academy. By way of quick reminder, the City of Asheville received $26.3 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding. For the purposes of today's presentation, I'm going to refer to it as ARPA. To date, the city has spent $25.8 million of our ARPA funding and has authorized funding for a combination of both external and city projects. We have $501,384 left in our city ARPA funding. At your February 13th City Council meeting, there was a discussion around potentially using the remaining unobligated ARPA funds for Asheville Peak Academy. Staff has done some due diligence in checking with the U.S. Treasury Department as well as the University of North Carolina School of Government and have confirmed that Peak Academy's funding request is eligible for ARPA funds. So tonight, the City Council is being asked to consider directing the city manager to coordinate with Asheville Peak Academy to work on a grant agreement obligating the remaining ARPA dollars. Quick overview of the Asheville Peak Academy funding request that was submitted on September 7th, 2023. The request was tied to rising transportation, food, facility, and uniform costs, and also noted that there has been more than double in the enrollment of that school since its opening in the 2021-2022 school year. As I mentioned in the key takeaways, after receiving this request, staff did some due diligence in checking with the U.S. Department of Treasury, as well as with the UNC School of Government to confirm that this request was in fact eligible for ARPA funding. And then as a reminder to you all, at your November 11th City Council meeting, $50,000 in strategic partnership grant funds were approved in support of this request. So some potential next steps, if City Council were to vote to consider and approve the motion tonight directing staff to work on that grant agreement, we would then between now and March 11th work with Peak Academy to get the grant agreement finalized, bring it back to your March 12th City Council meeting for a vote, and then after March 12th, of course, work with Peak Academy first to get the grant agreement fully executed, and then work with them to make sure all reporting documentation is submitted to begin drawing down the funds. I've talked to Kim Marmon-Sachs in our finance department. She thinks that would take roughly a month, so foreseeably if on March 12th the grant agreement is approved, by mid-April, Peak Academy could foreseeably begin drawing down those funds.
So before you is a suggested motion directing the city manager to coordinate with Peak Academy to develop that grant agreement. And then back to the key takeaways, again, you do have $501,384 remaining in your unobligated ARPA balance. And as a result of the conversation at your February 13th City Council meeting, there is a potential motion for you to consider obligating and allowing staff to work with Asheville Peak Academy to have those funds support this local charter school. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, so we'll need a motion, and then we've got a couple folks signed up to speak under this item.
Okay, I move to direct the city manager to coordinate with Asheville Peak Academy to collect all federally required information to finalize a formal grant agreement with Asheville Peak Academy in the amount of $501,384, using the remaining unobligated balance of ARPA funds.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No, do a minute. I'll say Sandra, second.
You want a third? Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we do have a couple people signed up to speak. I just wanted to say before we call on the speakers, I have come to appreciate this request for funding. I'm going to support it. I do have deep concerns about education in North Carolina and the state of education in North Carolina. And I know that nationally we're losing students in traditional public education. That's true in North Carolina too. We're down somewhere in the 70s. I think 76% of kids in North Carolina go to public schools that aren't charter or homeschool or private. And because North Carolina funds on a per pupil basis, that means that our school systems are losing funding and they're having a difficult time meeting. A lot of counties this year are having budget shortfalls, and we'll have further budget shortfalls as the federal relief money that was allocated to school systems falls away this year, the ESSER funds as they're called. And in general, charter schools in North Carolina have been used as a way to resegregate our school system, and that's true statewide. This being one of the rare exceptions, Peak Academy. So Peak Academy has achieved incredible outcomes, and to me, this is a form of reparations, because during desegregation, black schools were closed. Black students had to move to the white schools, and the black schools, in our case, were given to the city. Many of our recreation centers were former black schools. So to me, this is a reparations of sorts in the area of education and education outcomes. I am deeply concerned about Peak being able to sustain themselves over time, and I know two things about that. I know that they're in conversation about working out a more permanent fix to make sure that they're sustainable for years to come, and I hope that all comes together so that we don't give this funding this year and see them close in a year or two anyway. That would be a not good outcome for anybody. And I do think also, just to go back to the state system, the North Carolina legislature passed legislation a few years ago that allows local governments to fund public education. And as many of you know, the way our state is structured is we have to remit most of our sales tax to the state to balance the state budget, and they are supposed to be paying for public education, and they fund charters. And so to allow local governments to fund education is a bit of a ruse in trying to shift the burden from the state to local governments. They have a surplus, and they're trying to eliminate the income tax in North Carolina, and they're trying to do it on our backs, so that we get to argue with each other about the lack of funding for public education locally, and that is immoral and despicable, and I hope that it changes. It's probably not going to change anytime soon, so we're left having this conversation locally, and I'm really mad about that, but I'm excited about Peak and the outcomes they're achieving despite the challenges that we face in each and every one of our cities, counties, whatever, trying to make sure that our children are educated and successful. So that's my little speech about this situation, and maybe somebody else has a speech about this situation too, or some comments.
What I'd like to say is, I definitely, I sort of concur with you that this is sort of a reparation issue, and I hope that with the reparation committee that we have in place now, maybe take this issue into consideration because our children are our foundation, and I cannot think of a better way to subsidize, the education when it's actually reducing an achievement gap, which places Asheville, I think, number 5 from the bottom in North Carolina.
No.
Huh? Is it
Number 1.
Oh, it's number 1 now? I'm sorry. Wow, number 1 now. So, and I do understand that it may be, as far as sometime, it may be a conflict with the local government and supporting local schools. So, like I said, only thing I would like to say, I would like to hopefully that the reparations committee take education of our children very serious, and hopefully they'll be able to assist in this matter. I think that actually sort of gives the reparations committee, as far as I'm concerned, power to actually go out here and actually be able to raise funding with that particular issue in mind, and being able to utilize the impact the school has had on our children in this area. Because basically, if you improve the outcome of the children in this community, you're basically improving the overall outcome of the Black community. So that's all I'd like to say.
Any other comments? And also you have a
Two
chance at the
things.
end too. But yes.
Yeah, just 2 things. One, we said we were going to do equitable recovery with these funds. I think this represents that for some of the most vulnerable students in our community, and that we wouldn't have this option without the folks organizing around Peak and their teachers and their staff. So I'm thankful for that. And the second thing is, at the Equity Engagement Committee, we've made a unanimous vote twice now that we need to increase the strategic partnership funds. We usually get over $1 million in requests. The goal for the past handful of years has been to address the opportunity gap in our schools. We usually only have $200,000 to $400,000, and so we always leave our partners with less funds than they need. And so we don't have a staff recommendation right now to increase the strategic partnership funds, but I hope that will come to council and that we can find funding to get behind some of these community-driven solutions so we can have a hopeful future for our youth.
And just to clarify, our delay, our hesitancy in terms of making a recommendation is that we wanted it to go as part of the budget process. We just think that it's a logical place for it to be discussed in the context of the entire budget.
You're talking about the strategic partnership.
That's
funds.
correct. I'm sorry. Yes.
Anybody else? Okay, we have 2 people signed up to speak under this item. You'll get 3 minutes to speak, and watch the lights on the lectern. Green means go, orange means you're getting close to stop, and red means stop. The first person signed up to speak is Jonathan Wainscott.
Hello, my name's Jonathan Wainscott. Mayor, that was, thank you for everything that you just said. I'm kind of blown away by it. It's the best thing I've ever heard you say.
Eventually it'll happen.
Yeah, we're having a moment here. I might even get weepy about it. Clearly there's support for this. Thank you for that. I hope that there's unanimous support for this. The statistics that we've thrown out here are just beyond problematic. They're beyond crisis. It's catastrophic. The achievement gap or the performance level of black students down to 11 and 13%. That's beyond a crisis, and it breaks my heart. It infuriates me as well that this has happened in this city, that the achievement gap could be the worst in the state of North Carolina. And Asheville City Schools has managed to be one of the best itself. I think it's, a shame on the community that the situation got to this point. And just thank you. I'm disappointed, to see in my community people who are hell-bent on suing Peak for discrimination, as though what Peak is doing is somehow tantamount to the segregation that Esther was referring to. This isn't a blacks-only school. Denying whites to go there and mandating that all the other whites in town go somewhere else. It's absurd that it even is talked about this way. It's a reparation. It's incomplete. I think it's a indication of how we've never taken repairing the origins of the black community in this country, this state, to heart. For those who think that elevating the black community takes something away from the white community, it does. It's going to take away crime, human misery, hunger. So thank you. And I hope it's a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. The other person signed up to speak under this item is Kimberly Collins.
Well, I thought I had ceded my time to Jonathan, but.
That's at the end. You did. You did.
Good. Well, first of all, Esther, eloquently spoken and well said. Thank you for bringing this actually to a motion and just realizing how important it is for all of our children to be properly educated and to get the support and resources that they need, be it through public school or be it through a charter school like Peak. Peak has proven time and time again, their numbers are phenomenal. Do you still have them? Left out. Their numbers are phenomenal. They're 6th in the state for charter schools in their performance in closing the achievement gap, somewhere, give or take a rank or so. I think that's amazing for such a young charter school. So please, I think I see my yeses. I hope that you all will agree and vote on this, because if you don't, I will single-handedly make sure that you will no longer serve on city council ever again, or for any public service in the city of Asheville. Thank you so very much.
Okay, that's it in terms of who signed up to speak under this item. Any other questions or comments, council? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, a unanimous vote there. Okay, we're going to review the rules, no clapping, and that's important because now we're going to move into general public comment. We have 13 people signed up to speak, but a bunch of time cedars, so I think we can fit everybody in under the normal time allowances. But if something crazy happens, we'll change it, but otherwise, I think we can do that. You guys are taking my jazz hands to a whole new level here, so for those who have not had an opportunity to speak before at council, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and then You, again, just watch the lights on the lectern, and red means stop. There are 2 groups that have ceded time to a single speaker. So those who have ceded their time obviously cannot speak. The speaker for the group can speak for up to 10 minutes. So the first person is speaking without ceding time or being a group speaker is Sandy Aldridge.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. I'm here to bring up an issue, especially since it's still Black History Month also. There have been a ton of people talk to me. I'm on the Transit Committee, I'm the co-chair. These are African-American riders who have complaints about African-American drivers, not everyone, and their treatment that they are having to deal with day by day. I think that's disgusting. And why don't we have some reparations for these people? Because all they're doing is trying to live their life. And for someone to bully them, harass them, just when they're getting on the bus is insane. And I would like to see that changed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Monica Buckley.
Hello, Council. Again, it's nice to see you. It's just been a couple weeks. I don't have a lot to say today. I just am hoping that we can just take a moment and understand that all of the people in Asheville, the people who are here to speak for the Palestinians, it is good for them to speak their minds. It's good for us to stand up for what we believe in. The issue that I have with you guys taking on a resolution specifically is that there is no evidence of genocide just because the word has been said hundreds of thousands of times doesn't mean that it is what's happening. And the reason it concerns me is that I am a Zionist, and what that means is that I believe that Jews have the right to live in their indigenous homeland. And I believe that people in their indigenous homeland have a right to self-determination. And that is what Zionism is. Whatever other stories, there are Zionists that hate Palestinians. There are Zionists that are out fighting for Palestinians. There are Zionists who are Christians, who are Jews, who are secular. I have been called horrible things by people in this room for being a Zionist, for being someone who just believes that the Jews have a right to live in their homeland. And that is the issue, is that it's conflated. Even though you're shaking your head, Shanika, it is absolutely the case. And Google it. Just Google it.
Did you say my name?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I saw you like.
Don't do that.
Like, I shouldn't say your name?
No,
Ma'am,
you shouldn't.
if you listen.
What?
Okay.
Not my name.
Let's.
Well, I just thought y'all
If
were
you-
supposed to listen neutrally, but my bad.
But we do have rules of conduct in the chamber.
Okay, I wasn't aware that I was not allowed to say someone's name in the chamber. I will not
Just
do that
direct your
again.
comments to all of council. before-
Absolutely. I also just wanted to say that there are genocides happening in lots of places in the world right now. And if we're going to put a resolution on the table for voting here in Asheville about this and making some sort of stand about it, then we're gonna need to do that for every perceived war crime, for every nation where there is genocide happening. And that will be what I would expect from City Council if you move forward this one specifically targeting Israel. And that is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You guys are doing pretty good, but let's remember to try to, I mean, whatever the speaker's saying, I'll try to deal with them, but you no hissing and booing or grumbling or whatever, just internally, if you can. Okay, so now we're going to hear from Jonathan Wainscott on a different topic, I think. And we have some folks ceding their time to them. Kimberly Collins, who I already saw, Paul Howell, who I think I saw, yep, and Sandra Brown. Raise your hand. Hey, everybody put your hand over. Okay, I see your non-red hand back there. Okay, so Jonathan, you have your 10 minutes.
All right, I am going to talk about essentially the history of our at-large election system. Surprise, surprise, it was nice to see that this issue has come up again. I saw that the question was asked at the Evergreen Charter Candidates Forum the other night because I submitted that question. Yeah, that's right, I'm gonna talk about it. All right, so our charter, this agency, the council manager form of government that we are using today was established in 1931. Now keep in mind, this is also the year that Hitler was running for office, and he would first declared that the Jews should be expelled from Germany. On a side note, has nothing to do with anything else. And also the year before that, in 1930, the Tuskegee Institute had just let us know that lynchings were also on the rise here in America. All right. So the issue is coming before the public is we wanted to change our form of government. The Great Depression had been going on for about a year, and it's time to throw everybody out and start anew. Right before this, 10 weeks before our referendum, Buncombe County voters managed to get a specific repeal of state law. It only applied to Buncombe County and only applied to municipal elections and county elections, and it prohibited absentee voting. So there was an issue of disenfranchisement already ahead of the referendum that was to be had. And this issue was a 6-year effort, and it was brought across the goal line by the Women's Buncombe Citizens League, something like that. All right, so in the papers in February, it's talking about the upcoming charter change. The proposed change in the city charter will be voted upon by the people of Asheville the 3rd Tuesday of the next month, blah, 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 blah. The voters will be given an opportunity to vote for or against the council manager form of government and to express their preference between partisan and nonpartisan methods of electing candidates. The Municipal Board of Elections, the bill names the same board recently appointed by the mayor, Owen Gudger, Joe Sevier, and William M. Coleman. These are the 3 men that would supervise the 3 elections, the referendum, the primary, and the general election to establish a new city council. Senator Bernard, who was bringing this issue up before the state legislature, was totally in favor of the city of Asheville reestablishing its charter. All he required was that we have a referendum. And one of the things that he wanted was for us to revert back to ward representation, which we had abandoned in 1916. But at the last second, the legislative people here put in the final draft for this charter change to come before the legislature right at the last minute. And it included the at-large election system. So this was baked in. This wasn't something that the people got to vote on with the nonpartisan versus partisan election element of that. Okay, let's see. Senator Bernard wasn't all that thrilled about it, and he said in a telegram, "You failed to provide in bill the councilmen at the time of their election should be residents of different sections of the city. If the council is to represent the people in a real sense, I deem it this important, even though councilmen may be voted for by the entire electorate." So we had individuals representing wards, even though the whole city voted for them. So I cannot assume responsibility for failure to incorporate this feature in the bill and will not at this late date jeopardize the chances of passage of the bill by holding it up for the changes, but will introduce it at the next session of the Senate. So there's a long history of sort of the tit-for-tat between Buncombe, Asheville, and Raleigh. It goes way back, and sort of some shifty maneuvering right before the referendum. And I think that's everything that I just said about that. This is some voter statistic or precinct statistics from the referendum. It was passed by about a 5-3 margin. And again, the nonpartisan versus partisan element that we still use today was something that was voted on. All right, jumping ahead, 1937, this was when the Homeowners Loan Corporation did the redlining and security grading of neighborhoods throughout cities all across America. And this is from one of the forms here in Asheville. Under detrimental influences, we have a Negro settlement in the area, a sanitarium for people with a nervous ailment, and smoke from the railroads. So Negroes were a detrimental influence in the property values at the time. This is actually not referring to one of the D-rated neighborhoods. This map shows all of the D-rated neighborhoods in red back in 1937, and I'm highlighting area C2. That's sort of the Montford area. You can see that this is, you know, most of south of downtown, all the way to the river, East End Valley neighborhood. Burton Street is D3. D2 doesn't exist anymore. In the C2 form, we have some areas up in North Asheville that were mentioned, Madison, Lee, and Crescent Street. And then there was the end of Flint Street in Montford and Short Street. As it turns out, D4 didn't have any black people living there. And this is a little bit more from these documents. William Coleman, who was on the Municipal Board of Elections 6 years earlier, lived on Montford Avenue, 36 Montford Avenue, where the Asheville Chamber of Commerce is located today, right at the top of Hill Street. More of the forms from C2. So Montford Avenue, formerly one of the best residential streets in the city. Flint and Cumberland, also good residential streets. Good Negro section on Crescent, Madison, and Lee, 10 years ago, occupied entirely by whites. Also lower type Negro section on Short Street, north end of Flint Street. These documents, these maps were produced by William Coleman, prominent real estate agent. 6 years before, was involved in our municipal election system. I'm going to jump way forward, 2018, just 5 years ago, 6 years ago. This is the district elections that we actually had here in Asheville from the time that Senate Bill 813 was passed in June of 2018 until we changed our charter, October of 2019. For that 16-month period of time, the city of Asheville had districts. We had them, they existed. We abolished our at-large election system. We had districts. We changed the charter before there was ever an election, and we did it the same way they did it in 1931 with sort of a fast maneuver by changing our charter right before the legislature went out of session. All of the redlined areas back in the day fall within the central district, except for D2. D2 is the wooded area around the Rathburn House over there, where there's no houses anymore. That was 100% black neighborhood. That D2 area doesn't even exist. So these are all the areas that were discussed back then that were black neighborhoods in the Homeowners Loan Corporation maps. And again, all of those black areas as they relate to the map that was created in 2018. So I'm pushing back directly on academics, historians, and journalists who have told us that one of the reasons there wasn't black representation in Asheville is we couldn't make use of segregation, congregation of the black community, that wasn't concentrated enough for there to ever be more political power if we'd used district elections. As it turns out, the the entire length of time since 1931 through 2002 has produced 8.6% average black representation on city council. And if you do all of the math, which can get a little bit long and I'm running out of time, basically you'll find out that every year there's only been 3/5 of a black person on Asheville City Council. The at-large election system was designed to disenfranchise black voters, and it did successfully. All those neighborhoods got wrecked. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you to my people who seated tonight. I really appreciate that.
The next person signed up to speak is Michael Tate.
I am here to speak for a ceasefire resolution, or in favor of it. And you know, this is not a hard ask. This isn't controversial. It's pretty simple. 60% of the US wants a ceasefire. 80% of Democrats want a ceasefire. I think you all have D's next to your name. Stand with your constituents. Call for a ceasefire. Join Chicago, join Detroit, join Oakland, Richmond, Carrboro, Durham, Atlanta. Call for a ceasefire. If we're here discussing reparations for African Americans, as we absolutely should, we should discuss reparations for Native Americans, for Puerto Rico, for Maoris, for Hawaii, for Aboriginal peoples, for all of Africa, for every single person affected by settler colonialism, including Palestinians who for over 100 years have suffered under colonial occupation. They have been denied basic human rights and a basic right to self-determination. Over 30,000 people have been murdered, roughly 70,000 people injured. Most have lost limbs, or many have lost limbs, many permanently disfigured, the majority of whom are women and children. These are not terrorists. 70% of Gaza is under the age of 30. They didn't vote for Hamas. This is collective punishment. We know that murder is wrong. Every single one of us knows that. An eye for an eye is not justice. 30 eyes for an eye is absolutely mass murder. You will die, your children will die, your grandchildren will die, and still there will not be a Palestinian state. That is the Israeli Knesset members of the Israeli parliament, saying that to Palestinian representatives. You will die. These are American bombs that we're dropping, 2 times the explosive force of a nuclear bomb since October. We've given $3.8 billion per year to Israel to subjugate and murder people. The US has given over $330 billion since Israel's founding. We don't have national health care. We don't have adequate K-12 funding. We don't have adequate higher education funding. We don't have retirement funding. Political or practically no social safety nets of any kind, but all the money in the world to blow people up. The US is the only country blocking the UN ceasefire resolutions. Even the UK, the British Empire, responsible for this madness, is ceding to us to make that decision, and here we are vetoing it. We're not acting altruistically. James Baldwin said it best: Israel was not created for the salvation of Jews, but for the salvation of Western interests. We are in this for oil, for natural gas, for trade routes. We're bombing people for fucking trade routes. Call for a ceasefire, please.
Okay, new people, we have a no clapping rule, but you can do the hands. That's perfectly acceptable. Also, I don't think I've heard the F word in here in a long time. And is that allowed during the, I personally don't mind the word. I think we're not allowed to swear. But now that I've said that, someone's gonna swear just because I said that. So just ignore that I said it, but.
Our rules probably
Prohibit, okay, just checking. Probably, we talk about them all the time and maybe we need to rewrite them to make them more explicit. We also don't allow signs, but I decided that stick's not a sign, so. Because once somebody brought a fake marijuana plant and I decided that wasn't a sign either, but anyway, here we are. Okay, so the next person signed up to speak is David Moritz. says you're talking about hotels though, so we're switching it up. You did, okay. All right, you can talk about whatever you want. Oh, you did change your mind, okay.
The ethnic cleansing of the Jews of the Arab world has been all but ignored. Up until the 17th century, there were more Jews in the Arab and wider Muslim world than in Europe. The ethnic cleansing of hundreds of thousands of Jews from the Arab world in the mid-20th century was systematic, absolute, and unprovoked. There were 38,000 Jews in Western Libya before 1945. Now there are none. In Algeria, there were 140,000 Jews. Now there are none. In Iraq, there were about 150,000 Jews. Now there are none. There were 80,000 Jews in Egypt. Almost all are gone. Unlike Palestinian refugees, the 856,000 Jews who were made refugees from the Arab countries have never received any proper recognition or international financial help. Instead, there is willful ignorance. So, for example, in Cairo today, the Swiss, German, Canadian, Dutch, South Korean, and Pakistani embassies all occupy the stolen homes of expelled Jews. Adding to the injustice, some Middle East commentators like to propagate the myth that the Jews of the Arab world were never discriminated against, or persecuted or attacked. Not only were Jews often treated as second-class citizens with discriminatory laws and additional taxes imposed on them, but many were killed or injured in pogroms. For example, in Fez in Morocco in 1912, Constantine in Algeria in 1934, Rabat, Morocco in 1934, and Gabes, Tunisia in 1941, and Aden in 1947, in Iraq 1941, in Libya in 1945, in Aleppo in 1947. Nor can such attacks be excused as somehow being merely in reaction to Zionism. There were many attacks before this period. In 1807, in Casablanca, there was a massacre of Jews. In 1840, the infamous Damascus blood libel led to the kidnapping and torture of dozens of Jewish children. Other pogroms occurred in Aleppo in 1850, 1875, in Damascus in 1848, 1890, in Beirut in 1862, and 1874. In Cairo, Jews were set upon by mobs in 1844, 1890, and 1901 and 1902. In Alexandria in 1870, 1882, 1901 through 1907. Between 1864 and 1880, there were a series of attacks on Jews in Marrakesh. In 1907, in Casablanca, 30 Jews were killed. There were also a series of massacres in Algeria in 1805, 1815, 1830, and in Libya in 1785, and so on. Today, the only Middle Eastern state where Jews and Arabs cohabit is, in any number, is Israel. Reams have been written about the Arab-Israeli conflict, but the story of the Jews from Arab and Muslim countries remains shockingly neglected. Jews from Arab and Muslim countries and their descendants comprise over half of Israel's Jewish population today, not European Jews. Whereas Palestinian refugees still languish in camps, not a single Jew still claims to be a refugee. Yet the plight of Jewish refugees from Arab lands is an unresolved injustice. Thank you.
Thank you. The what? What did you do? Oh, okay. David, you left your, Maggie, thank you. I'm sorry, I did not see that. Please, no flicking anybody off. The next person signed up to speak is Noor Abdel Fattah, and we have 3 people ceding their time. And if those people could identify themselves, Claire Clark, thank you, Cassandra Dayton, yes, and Gabri Nassar McMillan. Oh, it's not, okay, somebody spelled it I. That's, who, yeah, where are you? You are there, thank you. Gabriel, sorry, anyway, somebody gave you an I in your name. There. All right, you have 10 minutes, thank you.
Amazing, thank you. Hi, y'all. Here we are again. I'm Noor, if there's no permanence, but you know. But I'm Noor. I was born and raised in Egypt, which shares a sea with Gaza, with Palestine. I grew up with a lot of displaced Palestinian people, and I myself am an asylum seeker in the United States because of reasons. Anyway, we are here to talk about the ceasefire resolution again. Last time we were here, we talked for about 50 minutes in a presentation that I'm sure you caught on was well organized, and we will keep organizing and showing up because I truly believe that this is a local issue, and so do a lot of people in your local community. Seeing that in about 1 week of putting out a petition urging you to look at this resolution. Around 2,000 people signed it, and that is online and door to door, and we are going door to door and asking your constituents if they care, and they do. Some of them, most people that I have shown up to their door to ask care and let me in, and we have a conversation, and they care. I'm gonna start by rereading this resolution. I know we've been here before, you have it, but I'm gonna remind you that it was written by a Jewish member of the community. This is not just 5 young people or whatever. This is bigger than that. This is someone who has lived in Asheville for decades and loves Asheville, and Craig, who I'm sure you know, and she has reached out to y'all, she has emailed you. She wrote this resolution, she is Jewish. And also to emphasize, not that this should matter, but it does, because it's used to fuel people in certain ways. I am not religious, which is, I guess, relevant to this. I don't think that Jewish people should die, and I don't think anyone should die, and there are 30,000 dead Palestinian bodies right now, and that is important to me. Okay, so I'm gonna read this resolution again. This is a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, whereas a representative in Congress represents over 650,000 people, whereas local elected officials in the United States take an oath of office promising to support the U.S. Constitution, whereas representing constituents to higher levels of government is part of that oath, whereas cities, towns, and counties routinely and properly sent petitions to Congress for all kinds of requests allowed under Clause 3, Rule 12, Section 819 of the Rules of the House of the Representatives. Whereas in 1967, a court in California ruled in favor of a citizen's right to place a referendum on the ballot opposing the Vietnam War, ruling as representatives of local communities, board of supervisors, and city councils have traditionally made declarations of policy on matters of concern to the community, whether or not, and this part to me is very important, whether or not they had power to effectuate such declarations by binding legislation. Indeed, one of the purposes of local government is to represent its citizens before the Congress, the legislature, the administrative agencies in matter over which the local government has no power. Even in matters of foreign policy, it is not uncommon for local legislative bodies to make their positions known. Whereas the ongoing assault on Gaza has resulted in catastrophic loss of Palestinian lives, injuries, destruction, and increasing hostilities, which threatens the existence of Palestinians as a people and widens war in the region, and has not resulted in the release of Israeli hostages nor promoted true safety for anyone. Whereas the United States is funding and enabling this ongoing assault by sending taxpayer-funded weapons to Israel, and its national administration is enabling the assault by refusing to call for an immediate and complete ceasefire. Whereas San Francisco, Oakland, Richmond, Detroit, Atlanta, Seattle, Durham, and other local governments have already passed resolutions urging the U.S. government to support an immediate and complete ceasefire in Gaza. Therefore, be it resolved that the city of Asheville declares its support for an immediate and durable ceasefire, the immediate delivery of ample and life-saving humanitarian aid to Palestinian civilians, for freeing of all hostages, and for an end to anti-Semitic, anti-Palestinian, Islamophobic, and all xenophobic rhetoric and attacks across our country, and will submit this resolution to our congressional representatives. This resolution is backed by a lot of your local communities, and you have a list of that. I'm not going to read it aloud right now. And something that we skipped over in our large but divided presentation last time that I did want to come back to, because we didn't have the opportunity due to the time limitations, was intent. According to the ICJ, intent is one of the most difficult things to prove in that court, in the International Court of Justice. Intent is so difficult to prove, but that was not an issue for South Africa, which has endured apartheid. They did not have any issue proving intent, and this is part of what has been cited in that court. I'm going to read some of the quotes. The first one is from Tali Gottlieb, member of the Knesset, Israel's House of Representatives, on October 7th said, "Bring down buildings, bomb without distinction, stop with this impotence. You have the ability. There is worldwide legitimacy, flatten Gaza without mercy. This time there is no room for mercy." And so, because of time, I just want to say with all the history, and we can keep going down the road of history. When did this start? Whatever, we can do that. But that is kind of irrelevant when between the last time that we spoke to you and today, around 1,600 Palestinians have been confirmed to die. You know, that is a significant number. And that is just from the last time we spoke here. The number is approaching 30,000 people. And so for you to think that this is not an issue that we should be taking on locally, to me does not make a lot of sense when your local community keeps showing up about it. And also, when we are in such a pivotal moment of history that is highly influenced by the United States. Yes, there are ongoing genocides everywhere, and the US has its hands in a lot of them, and long has. But there's an explicit relationship here that I think cannot be ignored. And the resolution does not say wipe all the Jews out of their homeland or anything else like that. It's a pretty mild resolution that I think we know is symbolic. You're not going to Asheville City Council is not going to pass their resolution and then all of a sudden there's going to be a ceasefire in Gaza. We know that. But around 70 city councils around the United States have passed similar resolutions, and so there is a movement of this country changing its position on this particular issue, and it has been on the local level because it's not in our Congress that is literally purchased by lobby groups, whatever they may be. And I'm sure that you know that and you have your own certain frustrations with that. And I also wanted to say, because I had a conversation with Monica when we walked out, that we are here in red hands as a symbol of the murder and the death and the destruction that is happening over there and our tie to it, because we know that this is our dollars, you know? Like, we know that we are working and trying to sustain ourselves and paying taxes, and then our taxes are going into bombs that are killing people, and we are seeing them die on our social media every single day. And when I say that, people say, okay, well, they're gonna die either way, just don't look at it, but they are still dying regardless, and so we must bear witness, all of us collectively together, including y'all. Like, we are just in such a pivotal moment. And so we are not gonna stop organizing, and we're not gonna stop showing up. And honestly, you have young people that have been mobilized to start showing up to your city council, to start investing more in the city, and that is beautiful. And there is something to like, upholding that, upholding us, upholding our voice, the young people. Because y'all, who is the revolution? We are the revolution! We will continue to be. No, you're not. Well, we think we are, and we know we are. Yeah, and the other thing that I want to say here also before I run out of time is I have sent out an email a while ago asking to meet with y'all, and I'm happy to continue to. I'm happy to sit across the table, and I'm sure a lot of us are, with Zionist folks of the community to find where we can align and pass a ceasefire resolution. So let's do that. We don't want to keep coming here. Those are our demands, is that we need a response from you. We can keep coming here, but we need something back. Or we're just gonna start disrupting and moving into different ways to make our voices heard, because we do not feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Free Palestine! 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 Free Palestine!
Thank you.
Free Palestine! 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 Free Palestine!
Okay, guys. Hey, hey.
Asheville City Council to the session for the following reasons. One, to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina and not considered a public record within the meaning of Charter 132 of the General Statute. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential are North Carolina General Statute 143-318.10E2. Number 2, to consult with an attorney employed by the city with matters with respect to which the attorney-client privilege between city and its attorney must be preserved, including but not limited to the handling the following matter. City of Asheville versus Christopher James Peterson and Mari Patricia Kelly Peterson, AKA Mari Peterson and Q2 Group LLC, court file number 16-CVS-1938. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3. Do I have a, that's my motion.
Second.
Second.
Did you get that, Maggie? Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Free
Any opposed?
Palestine!